Welcome to the complete guide to Nightgame. In this video, you're going to learn everything you need to know to be able to go out to a bar or a club any night and expect to get multiple girls' numbers, expect to be dancing with different girls, probably making out with different girls, and to very often, if not even most of the time, be able to take a hot girl home and hook up with her that night. Now, this is not just going to be theory. This is not just going to be a lecture. I'm actually going to include in-field hidden camera examples of the different concepts as I talk about them. So I'm going to show you whenever I'm talking about how to do a certain type of approach or how to take the lead or how I'm going to show you hidden camera examples of what that looks like from myself doing that. So this is a lot more than just theory. Now, this is a complete guide. This is not going to be a 5 or 10 minute video. This is not some quick dopamine hit. This is for someone who really wants to learn the ins and outs, all the core essentials of how to be successful when going out at night. And just to be clear, I'm someone who is at this point, it's in the hundreds, the number of girls that I've pulled from bars and clubs. And I'm someone who's, had a lot of success, if you will. I've been doing this for years, but I'm also someone who it was very difficult at first. I'm someone who, in my first few months of going out, I was so cringy, I got kicked out of a bar just for being cringy. Not for being too drunk, not for being too aggressive, just I was that cringy. So this did not come easily to me. And when I started, I really struggled. I did a lot of things completely wrong. And that's why I believe I'm one of the best people to teach this, because not only do I know what it's like to be good at it, but I know exactly what the mindsets and behavior patterns of someone who is struggling looks like. So with that said, we're going to start not with opening, which I know that's the part that a lot of you guys are like, all right, what are the pickup lines? What is it you say specifically to open a girl? I know that's what a lot of you, let me move this back. It seems to be a little over, the mic's a little hot. But a lot of people are going to be wondering, so what is the actual opener? What is the secret magic line that's going to get the girl? There's no magic opener. We will talk about different openers that you can use. And even though that's the part we like to fixate on, what matters more than the opener is getting yourself in the zone, because most men tend to have logical jobs. They have jobs where they're on a computer, where they're looking at numbers, they're looking at, they're not just being gregarious and social and having fun, unless you're a promoter or something like that. The vast majority of guys, before you go out, you're in a logical headspace, and you actually have to shift gears to get into a social headspace. So one of the biggest skills in pickup is being able to get out of that logical headspace, because if you're in a logical mindset and you're approaching women, you're going to be robotic, you're going to be emotionally unengaging, you're going to basically just kind of turn girls off, right? It's not going to be more fun to interact with you than to listen to the music, than to do whatever they were doing. And you have to offer more value. Being around you has to be more interesting than what the girl was already doing. And if it's not, she's just going to automatically, subconsciously just feel this repellent energy. So this is the part that most guys, when they're learning pickup, skip, is understanding that there is an emotional. The game is largely about pressing your own buttons, about getting yourself into a state where pickup is going to be effective in the first place, where you are having fun, where you are enjoying yourself, and where you are in control of your own emotions. That's something that might sound crazy, but at first, your emotions are going to be controlling you, especially if you're new to pickup. You're going to go out and feel stressed and anxious, and you feel like you're at the effect. You are reacting to the environment. But when you learn how to get into zone or get into state, as it's sometimes referred to, then you're going to be in control of your emotions. And then you're like, I want to feel sexual energy. I want to feel, passion. I want to feel fun, you'll have a lot more ability to make that happen when you get into the zone. But there is a skill set to making that shift. And what it has to do is with the scientific research on flow states, which was founded and started by someone called Mihai Csikszentmihalyi, who is a psychologist that did research into peak experiences. And peak experiences are what he ended up calling a flow state, which is best described as an emotional experience or state where you feel your best and perform your best, where you basically get completely out of your head and you get into the moment, right? Where it's almost like you're watching yourself take action. And in this state, your normal limitations no longer apply. And you'll find that suddenly you're completely, like, far more witty than you ever were before.
Yeah, you're a pig.
No, I'm a virgin.
That has no correlation to being a pig.
How could you possibly be a virgin pig?
The roots are like tiny, so fun. It's like supposed to be like all like loose and bleedy.
That's so mean. Oink, oink.
All right, well,
If I'm a pig, I'm a teacup pig.
Chill personality and
Thank
a very
you.
great sense of humor. One person I've met in my entire goddamn life. He says you don't look ugly, you don't look ugly. I'm so happy we ran into you guys tonight.
Aw.
This is really fun.
Yeah, it is.
I like him. I like the vibes. He's
Thank
giving
you.
off.
And it's kind of surprising. You will even be able to, for example, speak in accents that you couldn't speak in before. You'll be able to make references to these things. You're like, how did I remember that? Right? You'll remember these like little specific things that you had no idea. You'll be wittier than you ever thought. You'll be able to be bolder than you ever thought. And you're going to basically get outside of your normal limitations when you get into state. Now, with that said, getting into state and learning how to do that is extremely powerful, extremely important, but it can also be a crutch. So I don't want you to see this as, well, if I'm not in state, I'm not going to approach. If I'm not in state and I'm with a girl and she seems receptive, I'm not going to try to take her home. I need to be in state first. No, because the only way you get into state is by doing things that are outside your comfort zone. That's important to understand. The only way to get into state in the first place is to do things that are difficult. That is what research into flow has found. And that's why pickup is probably one of the easiest ways to get into a flow state, is because we all have a fear of social rejection. We all have social anxiety to some degree, not to a degree where you have a condition, but everyone is going to feel that approach anxiety. Everyone's concerned about getting rejected on some level, whether or not you like to admit it. And so when you're putting yourself in these situations where girls can reject you, you will eventually shut off that part of your brain, the inner Woody Allen that's insecure and overthinking and has all these negative thoughts. You will turn that off eventually if you take enough action, if you do enough approaches. Because every time you approach a girl, you are facing one of the fundamental, fears that we have, social rejection, as a human being. And so the more you do that, eventually that will shut off. Now, there's more to it than just approaching a lot of girls. That's not the whole picture of how to get into state. It's a little bit more nuanced than that. But pickup is something where you can have true peak experiences. Some of my best memories in life are not getting laid, not taking a girl home, but getting into a state when going out where I'm just completely free flowing, completely out of my head. Time basically stops flowing at a normal rate, and where I've gotten completely out of my own way. It's basically like a drug high, and there are neurochemicals involved like dopamine, norepinephrine, pretty much like cannabinoids, even similar to marijuana. So endorphins, these are all involved in a flow state. Now, that is the first thing you need to do, is to focus on a strategy that will get you into a better state over the course of the night. And at first, this may take a lot of energy. It may take, an hour to get into a good state. But over time, you'll be able to do this quicker and quicker and quicker. And now for me, it's usually within 5 minutes or even less that I get into state, because it's something that states become traits. So over time, as you get into the same state again and again and again, it starts to become your default. It starts to become natural. So let's get into the strategy for how to actually do this. So number one is to get into state is that you have to realize that approaching for most guys is something that is very difficult unless you get really drunk or something like that. Approaching women is very difficult, and expecting yourself, if you're not experienced with this, expecting yourself to be able to just immediately start approaching girls after girl after girl, it's probably not going to happen. It's probably going to be something where you're going to procrastinate, you're going to make excuses, and what you'll do is you'll look for the perfect opportunity. You'll be like, where is the perfect girl who's by herself? She's hot, but not too hot. She looks bored, etc., etc., etc. And you're not going to find that. You're not going to find that perfect opportunity. You're going to rationalize that this girl's not good enough for whatever reason. And that can basically take up your whole night, or you end up maybe talking to 2 or 3 girls over the course of, let's say, 4 hours because you're looking for the perfect opportunity. So what you want to do instead is lower your threshold at the beginning for who you're going to talk to. You're going to talk to anyone. You're going to talk to, it's fine, talk to guys, right? You don't need to hit on guys, but you can talk to guys, socialize with everyone, talk to girls that you don't find physically attractive, because even doing that is going to get you social momentum. It's going to start improving your state, and that is very powerful. Now, once you reach a point where any girl you see, you know you can approach her without any hesitation, then you can be picky. But don't be picky until then. Your ego will get in the way. Your ego will find excuses, and you'll end up not getting in the zone at all. You'll end up not taking enough action to basically get the snowball rolling. So talk to anyone until you're not hesitating. That is the first rule of thumb to follow. Talk to anyone, and you don't have to go up and say you're hot, right? But you start a conversation with anyone. Now, secondly, is to understand that it's okay to do warm-up approaches. And by that I mean, if you're feeling hesitant, like you see a girl you want to approach, or you see a girl that you know, like someone you know you should talk to just to start warming up, maybe you're not even attracted to them, but you know, okay, I should be talking to everyone. It is important to be aware that you don't have to have a good approach at first. Your first approaches don't have to be committed. It is perfectly okay to just go up to a girl and say, oh, I like your style, and keep walking, right? It's perfectly fine to compliment a girl on her dress, her hair, her jewelry, whatever. It's okay to do that as you walk by and to not commit. And it's actually a very good strategy, especially if you're someone who has approach anxiety. And let's be real, that's the vast majority. The people who don't have approach anxiety are sociopaths. That's what they're called. So most people do. And that is, even though your ego is going to want to say, that's stupid, that's pathetic, like I'm not a little bitch who needs to do that. Here's the thing. It works. And what matters to me is not what feels good to your ego. What matters to me is what actually works. So doing warm-up approaches, and this means just walking by a girl, or if a girl's walking by, you don't commit. You don't stop and like try to keep the conversation going. All you have to do is give a compliment, right? That's it. And it can just be, I like your outfit. I like your style. I like your dress. Whatever.
Let's say you look absolutely adorable.
As that. It could be hi, right? You could literally just, if you can't think of anything, just say hi. And you might be like, that was a little geeky. That didn't feel cool. But guess what? Every time you do that, your neurochemistry starts to kind of realign a little bit. Your brain stops seeing strangers as a threat, because at first, that's absolutely what your brain is going to see until you get comfortable going out at night. So your brain is seeing all these potential threats. It's just, in a primal way, we see strangers as a threat, because back in tribal times, if you didn't know someone, that meant they weren't in your tribe. And if they're not in your tribe, they might be an enemy. And so you have to give your brain proof that that's not the case, that these people are friendly. And the more you go out to bars and clubs, the more you feel like this is your home, like these people are your allies, but it takes time to get there. You have to talk to people and realize nothing bad happened. So every time that you give a compliment and the girl's like, thank you, or maybe just does nothing, right? Usually those are the two responses. Either they say thank you or they say nothing. You're going to get more evidence that approaching is not a big deal. You're going to get more evidence that this is something that has no negative consequences. And so that's a simple way to do it. Another one that I like to get in the zone is to walk by and say, I love you. I love you. And what's good about that is it's a little bit more, you're going to get a bit stronger responses. So some girls might say like, no, you don't, right? They might challenge it. But other girls are going to say, I love you too. That's going to happen regularly if you say this, and then you have a really good opening, right? Like that can lead to something very easily. And it's a way to say something that is, it's inherently like it is sexual, but it's a little bit of a joke, right? It's a little bit sarcastic. It's not meant to be super serious, but it's a way to get out of taking things too logically and too seriously, and that's a way to get yourself more into an emotional state. So that's a simple one that you can use when you're like warming up or getting into the zone, if you will. So what you want to do is do warm-up approaches until you don't need to. So every time you do a warm-up, you're telling yourself, my threshold for success is just to say something. My threshold for success is just to give a compliment. I love you. I like your dress. I like your shoes, whatever. And then you're allowed to walk away. You can go up to a girl, you can just walk by her, and then you can leave. That's all you have to do. But in your mind, you're kind of giving yourself the option of continuing, right? If the girl reacts very well, or if you're just feeling like, you know what, I want to keep this going, then you introduce yourself, right? Hi, I'm Avery. Obviously, use your own name, but hi, just introduce yourself, right? And then if that happens, then you have a genuine interaction, and that's when things start to really start happening, right? That's when you're having the potential to start getting numbers, start getting tangible successes. Now, this could take 3 times, this could take 5 times, it could take 10 times, 20 times. It really depends. Over time, it's going to get easier to reach the point where you can do genuine approaches. That'll take less and less time as you get more experienced. But look, if it takes a while, if you have to compliment everyone, that's okay. But the one important distinction I want to make is the less time you spend between each interaction. So each time that you just say something, even if it's as simple as, I like your style, the less time you spend between each interaction, the faster you will get into the zone. Because basically, there's a principle that the more you do, the less the environment does to you, and vice versa. So if you're not doing much, if you're just kind of like every 5 minutes giving a compliment, that's not going to be enough. That's not going to get you in the zone. Maybe by the end of the night, perhaps, but probably not even then. So you have to reach a certain critical mass. And the way you do that is approach, or warm up. So talk to everyone. It should be like every 30 seconds, maybe even every 10 seconds, depending on how busy the venue is. And the less time you spend between each interaction, the faster your brain will reach a point where you're like, you know what? Nothing bad happens when I socialize. People seem to be giving me positive responses a lot of the time, or at least neutral responses. And so this is not a big deal. Why not commit a little bit more? Why not have a real interaction? And so once you're able to have a real interaction, that's when you make a shift to where your focus is to take things a little bit more seriously, to where you're going up to girls, and I'll give you a couple different openers that you can use. One basic opener is, I like your look, right? I like your look is basically, it's a direct opener where you're calling them attractive without saying, I want to say you're hot, I want to say you're beautiful. And that can work, but in Night Game, that is the most common thing that girls hear, and so it doesn't stand out very much. And so finding a little bit of a more unique way to say it, I'd say is a little bit preferable, right? So either you can say something like, I like your look, or literally just introduce yourself. Just say, hi, I'm X. And the reason this is effective is it shows a lot of confidence, right? It shows that you assume that you have value and that you don't need to put on a show or do anything special. Just introducing yourself is enough. And the responses you get will depend, because this is not a compliment. It's not inherently saying something nice about her. To pull this off, you do need, like a good energy. You need to You need to make strong eye contact. You need to have a certain intensity or it won't work. And if it's not working, then I would recommend, until you get more in the zone, go with a compliment, right? Go with "you're very beautiful," or "I like your style," or "I just want to say I like the look. I like your look." Try any of those things, because those will usually, they're more likely to get a positive response, even if your vibe is a little off. Because, like, what girl is going to be like, "Oh, you're flattering me, fuck you"? Well, some will, but not very many. You're going to get more positive responses, which will help you get more, positive reinforcement. You don't want to be reliant on that, because really, at this point, even if a girl rejects me, that just gives me more momentum. But it's not going to hurt if you're getting positive responses. So giving compliments is a good way to do that. When you're at the point where you're in the zone enough to commit to the interaction, your goal is not, don't focus on like, I'm trying to pull this specific girl. Your goal is more, I'm trying to push each interaction further than the last. And this could mean a number of things. The most obvious one is that you're going to, if the first interactions are like 20 seconds, 30 seconds, you're effectively a two-pump chump, you're going to want to keep them going longer over time and push them as far as you can. But it also applies in other areas as well. So holding stronger eye contact, being louder, getting into closer proximity, being more physical, leading the girl, right? Inviting the girl to a different part of the club. Hey, let's go to the dance floor. All of these kinds of things are also part of it. Or making more sexual innuendo. Things like that. You're going to, in any way possible, you're trying to push your interactions farther. Now, the simplest one is just, I'm going to keep this interaction going longer, right? That's the most basic one to start with. But overall, you're going to want to be thinking, what are the different ways that I can push my interactions farther? Because you kind of want to think of it as riding a wave. Basically, if you tell yourself, all right, my goal, first approach, I'm going to take the girl home. Well, that's basically like taking on a wave too aggressively, right? And you wipe out, you're fucked. At the same time, if the whole night you're just doing warm-up approaches and you never level up past that, well, then you're not going into it enough, and then you're not going to actually, I'm not a surfer, so if the metaphor isn't perfect, I'm sorry, but you get the basic idea, right? You're not going in strong enough, and then nothing is going to happen. It's just like going to peter out. So you want to find that middle ground where you are pushing yourself, you are getting out of your comfort zone gradually, like 10% at a time, and then you'll be shocked that by the end of the night, you're able to go in very strong, be physical, take the lead, and pull a girl home pretty easily. But you have to follow that process and that's what you want to be thinking, like, how do I push interactions a little bit further? What's the next level? What's the next step? And you do that throughout the entire night. That's your overall goal, and that's how you get in the zone. The other thing that is very important for getting in the zone is to make sure that you're not judging yourself. You're not telling yourself that, oh man, I fucking suck. She rejected me because I'm too short. If I was a Chad, that wouldn't have happened. Look, about half the girls you approach are going to, it varies, right, depending on the environment, but a large percentage of the girls you approach are just instantly going to reject you because they're with their boyfriend or something like that, right? Something that's completely out of your control. They're on their way to a table and they're not going to reject you, or they're not going to talk to you to risk losing status with the guy who invited them to the table, things like that. Some girls, no matter what, they're just going to instantly reject you. That's part of the process. It doesn't mean anything about you. It's not something to take personally. If every girl is rejecting you, chances are you're too quiet, you're not smiling. That's a big, simple thing. Just smile on the approach, show positive attention. Or you're judging the girls, right? You're coming in too negative. It's something like that, right? If every girl's rejecting you, there's probably something you could do better. And so after you get rejected, you either want to just give yourself props for taking action, like most guys would never do that. Give yourself credit for doing an approach, even though you felt resistance to it. Or even think about what's one thing that was good about it? You know what? I made stronger eye contact, or I stayed in longer. I didn't give up as quickly as I normally would have, or whatever, some small thing, or at least I approached, right? At least I didn't make an excuse and I actually approached and I built some momentum. At least I did that, and that is a win. Tell yourself something that is a win. You want to take control of that voice in your head, because by default, for the majority of guys, that voice is going to be coming up with excuses. That voice is going to be more negative, and it's going to basically kind of be at war with your goal of getting more in the zone, having more fun, and getting to a point where you've gotten out of your own way. That's basically what's going to happen. That's the strategy for getting in the zone throughout the course of the night. Now, with that said, let's get into more of the specifics of each approach. So when you approach a girl, yes, knowing what to say is definitely helpful, but you can really just rely on the basics. The basics are fine because making a good conversation is not about memorizing a bunch of lines, because then you'll come across as robotic, you'll come across as scripted. It can work with enough practice. It can be made to work. So I'm not saying scripted game doesn't work. And having things that you say repeatedly is useful, but you shouldn't look at it like memorizing a script, because most of the conversation, 80%, should be free association. It should be whatever she says, you're making connections, you're making references, you're making jokes based on what she said, right? You're playing with whatever she gives you. You're kind of looking at what she says as this clay that you're able to mold.
Where am I?
It's pretty close here.
I know it's across the street, but how do I get to the street?
It's always been a problem for me. Because I've always felt like I belong to the streets, but it's hard to find the streets.
You do belong to the streets, I can tell.
I do.
Moisturizer.
That's the key.
What's his name? Bill Skarsgård? The guy who played It?
I mean, yeah, it's hot. Like,
I
like
No,
that. That's a sexy clown. Oh yeah. Ooh.
He's really good looking, but
He is, but you said it. Like, it's like if you said like, you remind me of Leonardo DiCaprio, but in the one where he played the retarded kid.
That's what you want to do. So when she says her name, you might be able to make some kind of reference. When she says where she's from, you might be able to make some kind of witty comment about that. Or her job, you can make a comment about that. To start, just have memorized at least 4 to 5 basic questions. And a few that you can use are, where are you from? Or are you from here? Where are you from? What do you do? What do you do for a living? What do you do for fun? Who are you here with? And what is your favorite sex position? Okay, that last one, by the way, that last one is a joke, because I know one person watching is going to take that seriously. But just those basic questions, right? And that is going to hopefully be enough to break the ice. Sometimes you'll run out of things to say. Sometimes it'll be a little choppy. And if that happens, the best option is actually just to say, fuck, I ran out of things to say. Is to embrace it, right? Is to say, you're making me nervous. I ran out of things to say. To basically be vulnerable, and that will do one of two things. Sometimes it'll turn the interaction around, because the girl will find it charming that you were vulnerable, that you weren't like trying to put on a mask. Even if it doesn't turn the interaction around, at the very least, what it will accomplish is it will help you get out of your head. It will help you loosen up and make your next interaction better. It'll be easier to start coming up with things to say, because this is something where you have to trust the process that, yes, you can keep talking. Like when you're with people you know very well, I'm sure you don't always run out of things to say within 3 minutes. The reason you're running out of things to say is the pressure is stifling you. The pressure is making it hard to be creative and to be the wittiest, most charismatic version of yourself. So as you lean into that pressure, it will become easier and easier. Now, having basic questions memorized will help you get to that point, will help you push things a little further. But eventually, you just have to trust yourself and understand that over time, you will get to a point where you're able to keep the conversation going naturally. You don't need a script. You're not like, unless you're really, really dumb. If you're literate, you don't need a script. You will be able to think of things to say and not run out of things to say as you get more in the zone. So at first, you're just going to try to push it as far as you can by using those 4 questions basically as scaffolding or as crutches to have some kind of backup to keep things going more than 5 seconds. But if you run out of things to say, just lean into it, admit it, and then that's going to help you get out of your head. It's important that you don't have this need to come across as perfect. It's important that you're willing to be vulnerable, you're willing to let loose a little bit, and that it's okay if you run out of things to say. Just admit it. Just say that. Use that as part of your game, right? A great example is if you watched Game of Thrones in the first episode, Tyrion he's talking to Jon Snow about being a bastard, and he talks about how he's, I don't know the exact term, what is he, a little person, whatever the fantasy word for a little person is, a dwarf, right? He's a dwarf. And what he says is that he wears his flaws like armor, right? He doesn't let them get to him. And so if you have a bad interaction, if you're being a little bit awkward and you try to resist that awkwardness, it becomes worse, right? It becomes basically, it snowballs out of control. It spirals and gets worse and worse and worse. But as soon as you embrace it, as soon as you accept it, admit it, then it goes away, right? It just kind of dissipates on its own, and that's where you want to get. So, with that said, that's the basics of how to get the conversation going. And you don't need to be sexual. You don't need to, like, for the first 4 years of myself going out, I very rarely was just like, you're hot, I like your body, stuff like anything, that was like explicitly sexual, I wouldn't say. And it's not necessary, because you can communicate the sexuality non-verbally. And being sexual, it can work, but it can also backfire. So telling a girl she's attractive, beautiful, whatever, hot, that's fine. That's okay, but like feeling the need to verbally be sexual, let go of that. You do not need to do that. It is not necessary, and it can come across, if it's coming from the wrong place, if it's coming from a logical place of like, this is how I'm going to reach the next step of the pickup, it's going to probably backfire. It's going to make the girl feel off and feel a little weird, and so it's better to have a more normal conversation and to focus on the subtext, on through your nonverbal communication, subcommunication. That's how you make it sexual, not through what you say. So that gets into the next part, which is make sure that when you're in an interaction that you are communicating several key emotions. This is what you want to focus on. And these emotions are sexual, fun, and dominant/leadership. So sexual, really all you have to do is, for one, get into close proximity. So you want to be in Night Game, the environment is loud, the environment is overwhelming. So you want to get as close to the girl as you possibly can without it making her uncomfortable. So as soon as she tenses up, if she takes a step back, then you take a step back as well, right? Then you give her, I mean that literally, like give her some more physical space to calibrate. But if you're not close to the girl, if you're 6 feet, you're like worried about COVID, or you're leaving space for the Holy Ghost, what's going to happen is that there's no tension, is that she doesn't feel your presence, is that the environment is affecting her more than you are affecting her. So you want to get as close as you can until there's too much tension, until you notice any kind of stiffness, and then you go back a little. But oftentimes that won't even happen. And then what you can do is you can start being physical, right? You can touch her arm, touch her shoulder, and then after you've done that, you can basically put your arm around her, and then it's very intimate. And you can often do that within seconds. So that's one, is to get in close proximity, and then while you're talking, just touch her shoulder, touch her arm, and then if she's okay with that, right, if she's comfortable with that, especially if she reciprocates it and starts touching your shoulder, your arm, then to eventually, within really usually a few minutes, if possible, then to, hold the small of her back, basically, to have a embrace, if you will, while talking, and that makes it a lot more sexual. Second, it's just strong eye contact, looking deep into her eyes, and you can do this with a couple things there's a couple little things that make a big difference. One is, be aware, are your eyes super open? You want them to be just like a little bit of, it's called, I think it's the squanch, the squinch. The squanch is Rick and Morty. It's called the squinch, which is where your eyes are just a little bit, what's the word? They're a little bit slightly closed, right? Not fully, not like, not like this, but just like 10%, a little bit. And that gives your eyes, the more bedroom eyes kind of look. And you definitely want to avoid your eyes being wide open, right? And it might sound weird, but you can check on this, not when you're with a girl, but check on this like, all right, how do my eyes look? Just check with your phone, because you might have a bad habit. That's something I've seen when I do in-person boot camps. A lot of clients have this habit of approaching girls with these eyes, and that telegraphs anxiety, discomfort, and it automatically makes the girl like feel weird, right? So it's important to make sure that your eyes are a little bit more, on the closed side, if you will, as opposed to being wide open. And then secondly, what you want to do is to make sure the eye contact is to make sure that you focus on one of two things, either the color of her eyes and like really just look specifically at the color, or her pupils, right? Look actually into her pupils. And when you do these two things, it makes the eye contact have a lot more intensity. Beyond that, the other thing that you can do is to think sexual thoughts, to think, I want to fuck you. And I mean that literally. There was a time I did this recently where I did that and you could see the girl just immediately like melting. And, I did end up hooking up with her and taking her home. And she was just commenting throughout the night about how intense the feelings she had for me were. And that's really when I noticed that shift, is when I did that. And I'm losing my voice from going out so much. But it's when I did that, when I thought, I want to fuck you, and I meant it, right? I felt it. I didn't say it out loud, by the way. I mean, just in my head. But when I thought that, that's when you could sense the dynamic of the interaction shifting to where she was just really, really turned on and really bought in, and it ended up being an amazing night. Now, you could do that. You could literally imagine the girl naked. You could imagine, sexual things happening. You could imagine whatever turns you on, but you want to have some element of sexual energy being projected, and the way you project it is by getting yourself into that state. So thinking about how sexy she is, thinking about, even just focusing on her voice, her energy, even just looking deep into a girl's eyes can turn you on, but you want to make sure you get some of that energy. And if you have that energy, you'll find that everything else is infinitely easier. You don't need to say anything interesting. You don't need to be super witty. Those help. Those are great. But you don't need them, because with that vibe, she's just going to get into a trance, a sexual trance, unless she's completely closed to the idea of something happening with you, in which case she'll probably be prompted to say that she has a boyfriend or she'll leave, but then you don't waste time, right? If a girl's at all open to something happening, that is what sweeps a girl off her feet. It's that intense feeling of desire, the desire to be desired. You can look up, there's been psychology articles written about this, about women's desire to be desired. That is one of the ultimate female sexual fantasies. For men, it's more about the woman, right? About how hot she is. For women, it's more about also how hot she is, right? It's about how this guy wants her. That's why vampires are one of the biggest sexual fantasies, because vampires have this insatiable desire. I mean, it's for her blood, but that's a metaphor, right? They just can't help themselves, right? They can't control themselves because they want her so badly. That is one of the biggest sexual fantasies. And you don't need to do anything verbally or to do anything logical. You have to get yourself into a state of desire. And so that comes through thinking, and you can just throughout the night, just, imagine some for example, some prawn you watch, imagine that, and, imagine literally just half naked women, imagine things that get you into that state. And that, I know it sounds weird, but trust me, it works. And the reason it works is because men learn to stifle their sexual desires. They learn, look, in high school, if you ever were to get a boner in class, you get laughed at, you get made fun of, you're ashamed of it. If you have a crush on a girl, if you tell anyone, you end up getting made fun of, right? You end up getting laughed at. So you learn to hide from that side of yourself. You learn to suppress it. And what happens is then your interactions with women, you get friend zoned. They become inert. They become really neutered, is a good way to put it. And they lose that power. You lose your masculine energy when interacting with women. And so the way to get it back is you have to swing the pendulum in the other direction and go full perv mode, not verbally, not in a way that a girl will even be like, oh, you're being too sexual, you're being too direct, because you don't need to make comments. You don't need to talk about her tits or something at all. In fact, it's even better if on a logical level, you're making her think, on a verbal level, you're making her think, I'm not entirely sure if this guy likes me. I'm not entirely sure if this guy's attracted to me, or if he's just, making conversation, being social. But she feels For some reason, she feels turned on. She feels the sexual energy, and she's not going to know that it's coming from you because you're not saying anything. You're not doing anything on the surface level that makes that very clear. She's going to wonder if it's just because she is so attracted to you, right? That's what happens when it's nonverbal. And then she's going to feel like she's chasing you. And part of that comes down to, there's techniques that you can use for that. But really, it comes down to being more nonverbal and having strong intent, and then verbally, teasing the girl, verbally showing the occasional potential disinterest, right? And we'll go into how little techniques you can use for that in a minute. But if you're non-verbally making the interaction sexual, that is far, far more powerful than doing it just verbally. Sex is pre-verbal. We've been having sex as a species. We've had language for about 50 to 100,000 years, depending on which research you look at. But humans, our species, has been having sex for hundreds of thousands of years without any requirement for language. So really think about that. What that means is that our mating ritual is that what leads us to have sex is not reliant on talking. It's reliant on non-verbal communication. It's reliant on things like eye contact, things like physicality, things like proximity. That's what triggers those feelings. That's what gets things started, not anything verbal. So what you want to focus on is getting that down, and you'll know you're getting it down when girls start making comments. I remember last night there was a girl who was saying, like, you're way too smooth, like you're way too good at this, and that's her way of saying basically, like, I'm feeling those emotions, right? And so she might say things like that. She might, if you're really on point, they might even start talking about the idea of having sex with you.
Would you like to watch an episode of Mad Men?
Now?
Yeah. You have about an hour. I'm like 50 feet away.
Minutes away, we watch Mad Men, but we are gonna have sex.
I don't know about that. Probably gonna make out.
I have time.
It's this way.
Don't expect that to happen on a daily basis, but it should happen occasionally where girls start talking about the idea of, or like asking where you're staying. That's a great one. If they ask where you're staying or they start touching you, right, they start being physical with you without you having to initiate, these are signs that you're really in the sweet spot where you're making them feel aroused, you're making them feel turned on, and that's a great sign. Now, that was the first one. The second one is fun. And by fun, I mean just being outgoing and being passionate, speaking in a way where you're engaged with what you're doing. Now, this doesn't mean you have to like talk fast or talk super like loud and crazy and over emotional, but you need to be engaged with what you're doing. You need to be pressing your own buttons and enjoying yourself. The more you get into state, the more this will happen organically. The more you will find that you're able to have fun. Now, there are other ways to do that. One way is if you're someone who's more stiff and more logical, is to do things that are socially dumb occasionally, is to use a cheesy pickup line. Especially the more you hear that, and if you're like, I don't need to do that. That's not for me. Then it's probably going to be good for you. Now, I want to be clear that this is not something that you want to be doing all the time, right? So, and I'll give you a couple examples of cheesy pickup lines. Do you like basketball? Because I'm here to shoot my shot, right? That's a decent one. Or do you play chess? Because I'm looking for my queen. They are cheesy. And are they the best lines? No. But will they work some of the time? Yes. And secondly, more importantly, is they help you get out of I'm taking myself too seriously. Right? They help you be a little bit goofy. Another way to do this, and this is the one that I use personally the most, is just dancing in a way that is very outgoing, right? Very unstifled, but knowing it's not good dancing, right? Dancing ridiculously. And just going to the dance floor and, here's one of my favorite moves, and just dancing like an insane person almost. I mean, not full insane, but dancing and just putting yourself fully out there and letting go of trying to look cool at all. That's a way to help you get yourself out of taking it too seriously and to get more into a fun state. Now, another one is to do your best to focus more on being emotional in the conversation rather than logical. So whenever a girl says something, thinking, how do I give an emotional reaction, an emotional response as opposed to a logical response? So if she says, oh, I'm from Kansas, instead of saying, cool, you would say something like, oh, Kansas, that's amazing. I fucking love Kansas. Very simple one is I love or I hate, right? I love that, I hate that. And you can do that with pretty much anything. Her job, you can say I love that or I hate that. If she says she's a nurse, you can say, oh, I hate nurses. And then, I'm kidding. No, I love that. That's great, right? Go back and forth. That's a simple way to add a little bit of that push-pull, which is one of the fundamentals to creating tension, creating sexual tension, is mixing between positive and negative. Pressure on, pressure off. Now, not negative in a way that comes across as aggressive. It has to be playful, and you'll know it's really about the vibe, right? I mean, first of all, it'll be negative if you call her fat or stuff like that. You don't want to do that. Talking about politics, be careful with that. But in general, you can tease a girl, and if it's coming from the right place, it'll be fun, right? She'll react well. And if it's coming from a place of like, then she's not going to react well. And that's how, and you can kind of judge whether you're offering value, whether you're being fun based on the reactions you're getting when you do that. So the general template is, how do I make things emotional? A thing that you can use is just to say, I love that or I hate that. Another one is anytime a girl says something, you'd say, you can go. You can go, right? She says she's from whatever city, does whatever job, etc. You can go. It was nice meeting you. That's another one. And these are things that just make the interaction more playful, more flirtatious, as opposed to being overly logical. Now, the last one is dominant. Now, dominant comes down to intensity. It comes down to unreactiveness. So when you go up to a girl and say, where are you from? That's not dominant. But if you say, where are you from? And you just let the tension sit there for a second. Where are you from? And let her feel the tension. Let her go, I'm from, right? She should almost act like she's qualifying herself, like she has to prove herself based in the vibe, right? So adding dominance is one of the things, it's one of the attraction triggers that you want to have in your interactions. Just having that like kind of challenging energy.
Approached from behind by a stranger.
I got in front of you first, whatever. Well, it shouldn't be hard to remember someone's degrees. Psychology and creative writing, which is almost exactly the same as yours.
Mine's English lit.
Yeah, I said almost exactly the same as yours.
Almost is not the same.
You know you have to take literature classes to get a creative writing degree.
Alright, you know what?
If you go over the threshold to just dickish or mean, it's not going to work, but you want your tonality to have dominance. You want your energy to have some dominance. Oh, what do you do? Where are you from? Let's go dance. Right? Authoritative.
Hi. I thought you looked unique, and I want to say hi.
Oh, hey, thanks.
What's your name?
Yeah.
Avery.
What is it?
Avery.
Oh, that's a
Avery.
nice name.
Yeah, so what do you study?
Chemistry.
Talking like a manager instead of an employee, right? Having that energy in your interactions. And you want to cycle, or you want to have as much of those three things as possible. Now, you might say, I'm not naturally dominant. I'm not naturally sexual. I'm not naturally fun. These are universal human emotions. You might not be comfortable with that side of your personality, but if it wasn't suppressed, it would exist. Being sexual, unless you're, like castrated or something, it's there. You just have to stop repressing it. Being fun, every kid has tons of fun. That is part of your natural personality. It just gets stifled through school, through work, through being logical, etc. And then being dominant, that is also a natural part of all of our personalities. And if your interactions are lacking any of these things, it's not because it's not who you are, it's because of how you've been conditioned to lose touch with that part of you. So I want you to be aware of that. These are all natural to every man who exists, but you're going to have to get out of your comfort zone to reacclimate to those traits. Now, the other principle I want to mention that's very important is pressure on, pressure off, or hot and cold. And you want to have both of these, because if your interaction lacks one or the other, it's going to get boring. So pressure on would be going in very strong, making intense eye contact, being physical, taking the lead, having sexual energy, like leading the girl from area to area, all those kinds of things. And that is necessary. It's important to have that. But if you're just that, the girl will start to feel like this guy maybe is a little pushy. She might feel like you're kind of chasing her. She might feel like you're the one pursuing her. And it doesn't leave her room to start chasing you or her room to basically, build intrigue about you. But on the other hand, if you're only cold, she's just not going to like you in the first place. She's not going to feel any connection. She's not going to feel any rapport, which is very important. There's going to be a lack of rapport, and then she's just going to not want to be around you. So you want to be aware of this dynamic and have some of both. A basic example is that if you're dancing with a girl, be the first to create space, right? Maybe you're the first one to start dancing, but you're also the first one to pull back a little. Or if you're making out with a girl, you're the first one to pull away before she wants you to pull away. Those are a couple examples that give her room to start wanting to pursue you, to start feeling that you're not the one chasing her, that you're not the seller, you're not selling yourself trying to impress her, that you're the buyer deciding if you like her. That's the frame overall that you want to have. Now, other ways to do this are, like I said, teasing, like saying, I hate that is a basic example. Or whenever a girl says something, saying, you can go. Another one is a takeaway, being like, oh, it was nice meeting you, and then just start leaving, right? Pretend to leave and then come back. Those are a few examples, but in general, you want to balance anything that puts pressure on: strong eye contact, close proximity, physicality, making any kind of like sexual comment, complimenting the girl, any of those kinds of things, that you're balancing it with the opposite, right? You're balancing it with pulling those things away, and that is what starts to get the girl to feel this desire to chase you. Now, this is a little bit more advanced, and it's not 100% necessary. It's not necessary to have success, but you will find that when you do this, you'll get a lot more girls who just want to go home with you that night. They just want to hook up with you. They feel this desire to pursue you because it basically becomes their own idea to hook up with you, as opposed to feeling like you're picking them up and that you're trying to get them, which eventually, a lot of the time, they're going to be like, well, that was fun. Thanks for the validation. It was nice meeting you. But they don't actually want to hook up with you. When you have this frame, they feel like they're the one pursuing you. It's their idea to hook up with you, and it's going to happen a lot more consistently. So push, pull, hot and cold, pressure on, pressure off. You want to be aware of this dynamic and to make sure that you have both in your interactions. And you don't want to think about a million things, but this is one that's worth thinking. This and strong eye contact. Focus on those. Don't focus on a million, like, what are all the different things I should say? Focus on those. Those are very important, and those are going to get you very far. And then there's one other thing, and this is the next topic that is very important to be aware of, which is leading and going for the pull. So your first option in any interaction should be to take a girl home. It should be not just to get her number, it's to take her home, assuming that you actually like her, assuming there's some chemistry and that you find her attractive. That is plan A. And then if you can't pull her, then you can get her number. Then you can set plans for later. And most of the time, that's what's going to happen, right? Most of the girls you approach who are receptive, you're not going to be able to take them home. I mean, a good amount you will, but more often than not, you're going to get the number, but that is your backup plan. That should not be the first thing on your mind. The first thing is, can I take her home? And there are two keys to finding out if a girl is someone that you can take home. Most of the approaches, the girl's not going to be alone. She's either with one friend or she's with several friends. So when you approach a group, you can just approach the girl that you're interested in, but then make sure to address the group. So go in strong, approach the girl you want to talk to. Nothing wrong with that. Shows confidence, and it kind of cuts through the bullshit. You don't need to go indirect and like win over the whole group. You can learn how to do that in the long term, but I wouldn't worry about that until much later. Just go to the girl you like, and then make sure that you don't neglect or make the other friends feel offended or left out, right? So ask how they know each other.
I love you. You guess? You're not supposed to be with white guys? It's all about that BBC. Avery.
Talk with the friends if it's a large group. If they start like engaging, right? If they like start paying attention to you, then you can talk to them, make sure that you win them over a little bit. A lot of times in a larger group, the rest of the group won't care, right? They'll just keep doing what they're doing, and you can just talk to the girl that you're interested in. If it's two girls, you're going to have to address them both to some degree. If there's a guy involved, you want to find out the dynamic immediately. A lot more of the time, if it's a guy, they're going to be like, fuck off. They're not going to want you to be there. But hey, there's nothing wrong with approaching a girl with a guy, because he might have just approached her. Or he might be in the friend zone. He might be some like beta cuck that is not going to get in the way. And because she's with a guy, no other guys are probably approaching, right? And so sometimes those end up being the easiest interactions. Those are sometimes the most receptive girls. This kind of goes back to momentum. It can be more intimidating to approach girls that are with guys. You don't have to, if it feels too nerve-wracking, it's something that you can build up to. But it is worth approaching girls with guys, because sometimes that guy is not her boyfriend, it's not her brother, it's some guy that randomly approached her and isn't even doing very well. And then the girl's gonna kind of enjoy watching the competition, and if you go in stronger and are less reactive, then you end up getting the girl. But with that said, whenever you approach, it's usually going to be a group, and you just want to address the group. The first thing you say is, how do you guys know each other? And start talking to the friend as well. Start giving them some attention. Don't neglect them completely. That's a very common mistake. And then what you want to find out is if you can separate the girl from her friends. So the easiest way to do this is generally, hey, let's go dance. Right? Hey, let's go dance. Hey, let's go to the inside area. Or if you're in the inside area, hey, let's go to the outside area. Or hey, let's go sit down and talk for a minute. Any of those are fine. Or hey, let's go get a drink. If you don't mind buying girls a drink, not necessary. And if a girl is proactively asking you to buy a drink, I would, if she's doing that early in an interaction, she's probably just trying to use you for drinks. And I just leave, right? I just leave pretty much immediately. I'm not going to waste my time on that. Generally, you're finding out if she will follow your lead. And you want to do this within a few minutes. Within a few minutes, if a girl is being receptive, you want to see if she will follow your lead.
I'm going to Riot House.
And if she will, that's a huge green light. That's a very good sign that you'll be able to take her home. And if she won't, if she's like, I have to stay with my friends, that means it's going to be more difficult. Now, that's one of the two things that you want to find out. The next one is to mention that you're having a kickback later, you're having an after party, you're going to be playing beer pong, or the one I mentioned is foosball, whatever. You can mention some activity that you're going to be doing later and offer the idea of her doing it with you. We're going to be having a kickback later, you should come. Now, if she says, oh, I'm actually busy, or I'm going to be going to sleep, or I work early in the morning, or I have a flight, whatever, then the chances are a lot lower that you're going to be able to pull her, and that means it's a better idea to get her number. So you're looking for those two things. When you mention the idea of doing something with her later, like a kickback, if she's like, yeah, that sounds fun, that's a good sign. That's a sign that you can pull her, and then will she follow your lead? If she will do both, that means you should be going for the pull. That means you should commit, and that you should hang out with her for another 20, 30 minutes to move her around. So move her to the dance floor, move her to the outside area, introduce her to your friends, things like that. And you already mentioned the idea of some activity that you're going to do later, and then you say, let's do that thing, right? Let's do whatever it was, and then you pull her. And it's really that simple. A lot of the time, it is that simple. It's not as complicated as guys want to make it. That's what you should be screening for. Will she follow your lead? And is she open to the idea of doing something later? If she says yes to one of them, but no to the other, then it's kind of in between as to whether you'll be able to pull her, and it's up to you, right? You'll have to make the decision, do I want to commit to this, or do I want to just move on? And really, that's kind of a personal choice. There's pros and cons to each, and that's going to be up to you. That's really a personal decision. If you're someone who is just getting numbers and you're not pulling, then I would recommend to go for the pull. But if you're someone who's not getting a lot of numbers, then I would recommend just getting the number in that situation. As an example of what this looks like, there was recently a really hot blonde girl that I pulled within about 5 minutes, maybe it was even 3 minutes. And as soon as I approached her, she's receptive, strong eye contact, being physical, etc. And she's with a friend, but the friend goes to the bathroom. So then it's just me and her. And literally all I did was I said, have you ever played foosball, right? That's one, I have a foosball table. That's an easy excuse to pull. You could have darts, you could have any beer pong, anything like that will work. But you do want to have some kind of activity that you can do. And it could be just getting drinks, but ideally it would be some kind of unique drink, something like Angry Orchard beer, something that they don't sell at the average bar that's a little more unique. So, because if you say, hey, let's go get drinks, well, why not get drinks at the bar? So you want to have some kind of excuse that does not make her feel like a slut. Some girls don't care about that. Some girls are just like, you know what? He said, let's get out of here. He knows what he wants. I'm on the same page. That's great. That'll work. But women get judged all the time for being a slut, and their friends judge them, guys judge them, everyone judges them. So it is something they think about a lot, and it's better to have an excuse to take a girl home that does not make her feel judged. Another couple good examples are hookah and smoking, right? Those are two other good ones that you can use. But any of those is fine, some kind of activity to take the girl home. And first, you mention the idea. So are you good at beer pong, or have you ever played foosball? Something like that. And then within 20 to 30 minutes, you bring it up again and say, hey, let's do whatever it was, right? Hey, let's go play a game. And so that's what ended up happening with this blonde girl. She said, yeah, I've played foosball. Oh, I just got a table. Let's play a game. And then I just hold out my arm. She starts walking with me. And then I say, my place is only a few minutes away. Let's get an Uber. And then that was it, right? It was that simple. So that's a very condensed version, but that's the ideal way to pull. You get her to agree to the idea of doing it later. This is called persuasion. You can read, there's a whole book about it. It's by the psychologist Robert Cialdini. You can read his book if you want to learn more, but that will make things a lot more smooth. It will make pulling a lot less jarring. So that is how you pull. And whenever a girl will not leave her friends and she will not follow your lead, that's when you go for the number. Then you keep talking for a couple minutes. After she said no, you don't want to immediately then get the number, because there's momentum to the fact that she's already said no to something, right? So you don't want to immediately then go for the number. But if the interaction is going decently well, it seems like there's some chemistry, it seems like the vibe is good, keep the conversation going for a few minutes and then get her number. Now, the key when getting her number is you might say, we should hang out sometime, right? It can be basic as that. It doesn't need to be complicated. We should hang out sometime. If she agrees to that, then you get specific. Then you want to say something like, we should get coffee this week. And if she's open to the idea, she'll say, yeah, that sounds cool, or whatever. Then you want to make those plans specific. So an easy way to do this is to ask, when are you free this week? And if she can't give you anything, right, she can't give you an answer, that's a good sign that she's more likely to be a flaky number. And it's good to know, right? It's less frustrating when a girl flakes if you already kind of knew the number was flaky. So that's useful. But in that case, just get her number and you'll try to meet up with her over text. But ideally, she'll say, you know, I'm free X day, I'm free Wednesday evening or whatever. And then you say, sounds good, let's meet at X specific coffee shop at whatever hour, at 7 p.m., 8 p.m., etc. You want to make it as specific as possible, and that'll reduce the amount of flakes you get drastically. It will make your numbers a lot more solid. And when you get her number, you can send her a text that just says your name and then see you tomorrow at 7 or whatever. And then 80% of the work that you would normally have to do over text has already been done for you. So that's how you make your numbers less flaky and get more dates set up when you go out. And that covers everything you need to know about Night Game to have success. I hope you enjoyed this video. Let me know if you want to see more long form videos that go very deep into a specific topic as opposed to the normal 5 to 10 minute videos. If you guys enjoy this format, then I'll definitely do more videos like this in the future. And if you found this valuable and you want to start getting multiple dates every single week, then you can click the link below to sign up for a free coaching call where you can find out if you're a good fit for one of my programs. There are several different options at different price points, but in general, coaching is very powerful for a couple reasons. One, because it gives you a lot more skin in the game. It helps you take massive action at a level where most people who sign up for coaching with me make more progress in a month than they had made in the previous year. And then secondly, it lets me address your blind spots, your specific situation. It is not generic. It is not one size fits all. Everyone has different strengths and weaknesses and different things that they need to work on. And when you're just going based on content, when you're just watching videos, it is not tailored to solve your specific problems as quickly as possible. And that's something that only coaching can do. So if you want to learn more about the different options, make sure to click the link below